So tell us about this brewing controversy over the length of time it took cops to get to the woman's home. I'm holding the probable cause statement in my hand, and no mention of a lot of other details, but no mention of how long it took cops to get there.
That's right, Jane. 13 minutes. A stunning 13 minutes was how long she was on the phone with the 911 operator while her husband is ranting and raving, talking about the end of times, hallucinating, allegedly telling his wife that he wanted her to shoot him, and then ultimately finally going to get a gun. She told the operator they had a gun in the house, while this guy, by all intents and purposes, seems like he's losing his mind. So why did it take police 13 minutes to finally get to the house when we finally hear the gunshot on the phone call and his wife is dead and they find her dead on the floor? Could this have been stopped if they had only gotten there minutes before, Jane? That's the big question tonight.
Well, you know, there's so many questions, actually. One question I have, if you take a look at this guy's eyes, you could see the pupils are like just black dots. Okay, he looks very dilated. Did police drug test this suspect, this murder suspect, for marijuana and any other substances after he was arrested? Now, the investigators are not telling us much at all.
We are looking at a marijuana aspect of this investigation to see if it did play any role in this particular crime.
Hallucinating, talking about the end of the world, asking his wife to shoot him, and then allegedly shooting her instead. All sounds like the kind of behavior you'd see from somebody on bath salts or crystal meth, not pot. So I've got to ask, was the suspect's pot laced? Now, marijuana is newly legal in Colorado, as we all know, and pot retailers are required by law to have their weed checked for purity and potency. But Howard Samuels, addiction specialist, founder and CEO of the Hills Treatment Center, that doesn't mean the suspect couldn't have gotten his hands on some tainted marijuana. And some reports are suggesting tonight he may have been high on edible marijuana. And I'm wondering, could it be that as opposed to smoking, he ate so much that he went well beyond a buzz to hallucinations?
Well, you know what, Jane? That's exactly my thought also. This is the second violent death in Colorado in the last month due to ingesting marijuana. The other one was a college student, 19 years old, who jumped out of a window after eating a marijuana cookie, okay? So, you know, marijuana edibles create hallucinations, anxiety attacks.
But what is it? What is it? Do you get more?
Do
you get more from eating a cookie, or as they used to say back in the day, a hash brownie, than you would from smoking? Is it something where you can really ingest huge quantities more than you could smoke?
Well, absolutely. I mean, just think, if you can get high on one marijuana edible, what about if you have 10 cookies? That's 10 times as potent. You know, it's not the same with smoking it. So, you know, you're setting yourself up for some really horrible results because of what you're really eating. And this is what Colorado really has to look at. I mean, by making this drug legal, which I am totally against, is just horrific.
Listen, January 1st, Colorado became the first state in the nation to open recreational pot stores. And we all saw the images, pot smokers lining up around the block to get their hands on some weed. A lot of stores ran out, and proponents were touting, hey, marijuana's safe. It's safer than alcohol. It's safer than hard drugs. But Christine Kirk's murder puts pot in a new light. It could be the second tragedy linked to marijuana since this new law took effect. So, you know, was it a mistake, Wendy Patrick, prosecutor, to legalize pot?
Well, I absolutely think so. And I got to tell you, Jane, I mean, it's true. When I read this story, I thought more PCP, not marijuana. Nonetheless, the problem with marijuana is we don't know enough about the way it affects people as we do with alcohol. I mean, we've been studying for years, you know, driving under the influence. How many drinks can you have and drive safely? It's much harder to prove how pot affects the system. And that's why we have all these unanswered questions when somebody ingests it and then behaves erratically. Sure, it could have been laced. I think you're right. That's very likely. But we don't know enough about it. I don't think it should be legal, and I think we're right to be asking the questions we are about how it affects behavior.
Dr. Gabe Crenshaw, psychologist, what say you about the legalization?
Well, you know, I have been on the fence about it before, but I will say we do know a lot about the effects of marijuana. It causes impairment with motor skills. It affects brain activity. It changes the neuronal pathways, which of course gets into the prefrontal cortex and things like that for your decision making. That's one reason why we could probably see this man.
I want to stop the panel. I want to talk about, and I apologize, Dr. Gabe, but very briefly, raise your hand if you think pot should be legal. Honestly, here's what I'm going to say. Okay, you got half a raise. Here's what I'm going to say. People are going to smoke pot just like they're going to drink. Prohibition only increased alcohol consumption. I think that, in fact, the criminalization of cocaine increased cocaine consumption. And I think that legalizing pot is something that is going to take away its glamour and just make it something that people do, and people are going to do it whether it's legal or not. Continue on, Dr. Gabe.
But we don't have a sophisticated enough system. We don't have a sophisticated enough drug education system in our country yet. I'm concerned about the children. You legalize, they're doing it anyway. We know that. But it does create psychosis. That's what you're seeing with Richard. A brief psychotic break, a substance-induced psychosis.
What about alcoholics, though? I mean, you hear the same thing with alcoholics.
Well,
yeah. We've seen this happen so many times with people that drink alcohol and ruin their lives, they ruin their jobs, or they get in a car wreck and they kill a family of 5 or something like that.
But we have sanctions.
I mean, who's to say who's to say this guy didn't have underlying emotional issues that this may have triggered? I mean, we do understand that he was arrested for a DUI before this, so maybe he had addiction issues that weren't just strictly to pot alone. Maybe he had some other things going on, too.